kind of summit meeting. Norris was the only one who was iffy, but even she had said she'd come this year. Now Lydia just worried they'd show up early, before she was ready. She had much to prepare: the house, the food, herself, the letters. Maxine needed a walk. Somewhere Lydia would need to fit in a nap so she'd seem bright, unfazed by the effort this was going to take. Now Lydia stood in front of her open closet, trying to decide what she'd wear. She'd narrowed it down to 2 possible outfits, both black, for 2 of her various selves. She didn't know yet which one she'd be tonight, though the range of choices had narrowed considerably. Formerly it had included carefree, seductive, demure, bookish, sporty, sexily bookish, sexily oblivious to how sexy she really looked, recently broken-hearted and sexier than ever. "You get my drift," she imagined saying to Celia, if she'd felt comfortable broaching this delicate subject with her, which lately she hadn't. What she would have meant was it had mostly been about men. The theme around which she organized her closet these days was damage control. Should she be the woman who has embraced aging, a look that was sliding dangerously close to who cares, or the woman who seems ageless? For years she'd coasted on the woman who looks incredibly young for her age, but lately things had taken a turn. And it wasn't just her wardrobe that had to be recalibrated. What about makeup? How to handle this strange color she'd turned? How much effort she put into that depended partly on whether she could risk wearing mascara, which mostly these days she could not, never knowing when she'd dribble sentimental tears. At least she didn't have to worry about looking good for men tonight. Men weren't invited to this party, though someone's husband or ex or boyfriend or, in the old days, secret lover, Lydia's usually, posing as a helpful friend or delivery person or unknowing drop-in visitor, always sneaked in, determined to defy the no-men ban, pretending to be there to pick up or drop off an invited guest, but really wanting to linger and spy, to listen and graze, to suss out the thrilling essential femaleness of it all. Or at least that used to be the case. Not so much these days, Lydia thought. Spence didn't count. He lived here. This aging thing had taken her by surprise. She'd heard tell, of course. She knew it would happen. Just not yet, and not all at once. Of course she'd known in the abstract. She just didn't know. She hadn't understood how bad it would get, didn't expect these ongoing losses, this sense of parts falling off the wagon as it rolled downhill. When she was younger, she hadn't fully comprehended that she was part of this cycle too, that she too would grow older, then old, and only then if she was lucky. Somehow, all evidence to the contrary, it had seemed for a while, in her 30s, even her 40s, that everything would stay the way it was forever, or at least until some distant time in the future, when she'd just cease to exist. She hadn't expected this process of public dismantlement, this precipitous downward slide, or for it to begin so soon. Her parents had grown older, of course, but more slowly and gracefully than this. Lydia saw now. Besides, they seemed always to have been old, permanently paused in late middle age. Their white hair had seemed intentional somehow, a style choice, and when they fell off the cliff, from spry to frail, and could no longer climb the steps to her upstairs studio, or squeeze happily into the passenger seat of her small, sporty car, she'd felt sad, but still, it wasn't her. And here was the ridiculous and shameful part she hated to admit. She'd thought they'd brought it on themselves. They hadn't taken care of themselves, is what she'd thought. Sometimes she even thought they were that way by choice. They liked those shoes, is what she'd thought. They moved that way because they wanted to. She'd thought they'd done everything slowly on purpose, to annoy her, that they didn't care about swiftness or grace. They chose not to square their shoulders when they walked in, not to lead with their sternums or tuck their tailbones or hold their stomachs in. Lydia felt ashamed now, and wildly regretful, thinking of her cluelessness, callousness even. But what had she known about collapsing spines, collapsing